Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Well, kind of. It's Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson on the Chad Benson Show on a Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. I know it's sometimes hard to hear that in times like these because so much is sad news every single day that you see. But we're going to try to have a little bit of fun as we go. But we have to start with the huge news that was dropped yesterday, at least as I would say, maybe the beginnings of huge news, because the idea is to try to start to reopen things. At least that's what we heard. And we heard it from a lot more than just the president. So there's quite a few people I've seen recently. The approval rate for the president has sort of fluctuated a bit. It's actually down below 50%. And it's been that way for a few weeks as far as his response to COVID-19, to the coronavirus pandemic. And so we're in an odd phase now where you're seeing things in Michigan that maybe you didn't expect to see everywhere. You're seeing a lot of people feel what I'm sure that if I'm talking to mostly an audience that is at home, I'm sure that it's the same sentiment that you feel right now. You want to go back to work. You want to return to your normal life. You want to get a haircut. You want to go, maybe to a bar, although that's probably going to be a little ways. You'd love to go to a sporting event, all that kind of stuff. It is now on the docket. There was a plan put in place yesterday, a proposal, I guess is what I should call it. Lots of PDFs, lots of slides shown, and medical experts were part of that conversation. It was not just the president telling you what he thinks should happen. There were several critics saying weeks ago when the president would be optimistic and say things like, let's get the economy restarted by Easter, which did not happen. And I don't think he actually truly thought it could happen, but he would say those sort of things, I think, to motivate Americans to continue to do what we're doing. And that is how the press conference yesterday started. I will be playing a lot of audio from it. I know there's a press conference today as well, so we may get to audio from that too. But this is the conversation, the big one from this week. Yesterday, it started out, of course, with the president talking about the things we have done so far.
The nation is engaged in a historic battle against the invisible enemy. To win this fight, we have undertaken the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And that's exactly what it's been. We've marshaled every instrument of American power, and we've unleashed our most potent weapon of all, the courage of the American people.
Now, look, I don't know how you feel about starting out with a conversation like that, but I think it makes tremendous sense to say thank you to all of us for what we're doing. If you remember just a few weeks ago, the medical experts were projecting, and this is Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, something like 100 to 250,000 deaths. That's what the modeling that they were using was saying, and we have beaten those numbers so far, and we will look to stay under all of those numbers, even as during this week and next week, we're going to get some sad and rough information. There's going to be more things reported about, more death, more loss of life because of COVID-19 than anyone would ever have wanted to see, and yet in some ways, we've really improved things from what they could have been. As the president touched on, there is more of that conversation. He talks about the experts and how involved they will be. Again, this is Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, as far as outlining this process, because I know that there's people on both sides of this conversation. I know that there's a lot of people that want to get back to work. I saw that it's very politically divided, actually, which would surprise, I don't know, probably none of us, right? That surprises no one. If you're a Republican, the amount that you want to get back to work by June is something like 65% of all people in that category. If you're a Democrat, 18% want to get back to work. And I have no more comments than just to give you those numbers. But so President Trump talks about Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci and how coming up with this plan is really utilizing their expertise.
Based on the latest data, our team of experts now agrees that we can begin the next front in our war, which we're calling opening up America again. And that's what we're doing. We're opening up our country. And we have to do that. America wants to be open, and Americans want to be open.
Yes, they do. Americans, I believe, do want to be open. We don't want to get sick. We don't want to put our loved ones in jeopardy. So we want to be smart about all that. But you have to agree, if you're listening to the show right now, that if it's possible, certainly in places, and they will continue to touch on that during the press conference and through their PDF, their plan that they released that I have in front of me, they will touch on areas in certain states that make way more sense than other places to start this. This will be a periodic rolling out kind of process. New York has already announced that they're going to be under shelter in place for quite a bit longer. So I'm sure that other states and governors will make those decisions. By the way, and I have this audio in here to play at a certain point, a couple weeks ago, there was a conversation as to how involved the governors would be in this process. And President Trump would want to believe that everyone will follow his lead, that him and the experts that he's put in place are of tremendous value to every single governor out there. Now, granted, we all know that's not probably a realistic situation, that a lot of governors will go their own way, and maybe they'll go their own way to the detriment of their state. We don't know. But that conversation was being had as well. And yesterday, the points made were that the governors will have control. That was both made in a conference call with all 50 of them. The president talked to all 50 and said, it's going to be your decision. It's going to be your move when you do this, how you do this. And that was reiterated several times by the medical professionals and the president yesterday, that they're going to be the ones making the calls. I have that audio too. But let's hear a little bit more about how the experts added to this whole plan. Because if you want to be critical of someone, because yesterday's conversation happened, if you want to say that you think it's too soon, the person you're critical of might not be the guy you politically agree or disagree with. The person you would be, the people that you would be critical of now are the medical professionals that have been involved in this from the beginning, the heroes to some on Twitter like Dr. Fauci, who, by the way, has a toy. Is anyone aware of the fact that he has an action figure now that's sold out? Some company made it. But if you want to be upset with people for this plan existing now, you have to be upset with the right people. Let's hear a little more.
As I have said for some time now, a national shutdown is not a sustainable long-term solution. To preserve the health of our citizens, we must also preserve the health and functioning of our economy. Over the long haul, you can't do one without the other. Cannot be done. To keep vital supply chains running, these chains have to be taken care of so delicately. They're delicate. The balance is delicate. We want to deliver food and medical supply. We must have a working economy.
He's right. He is right. We must have a working economy at some point. We cannot allow ourselves to do that to the detriment of the public health of all of our citizens. But we do need to, it has to happen. I mean, if you've seen the unemployment rate and the unemployment claims in the millions every single week right now that are happening, essentially after the report the other day for the unemployment claim numbers, we have now erased the entire amount of job creation that's taken place over the last decade. We've lost all the jobs created over the last decade if we're looking at the amount of people that have claimed unemployment in the last few weeks. That can't continue to happen. We cannot continue to do this. The small business loans that existed and the plan that was in place that needs to be changed, there needs to be more in that bucket very soon. It's out of money. You can't give loans to the small businesses who most need it. I even believe that I saw Mavericks owner Mark Cuban tweet out that it's a shame that several of the companies that would most need this loan, the smaller companies or the niche products, et cetera, the people that are maybe most hurting, they can't get them. They can't even get approval. They can't get them, and now it's out of money. So this has to change. These things have to eventually go the other way, and we have to do it intelligently. That's why the coronavirus task force has several of the members on it that it does. He was asked at some point during that press conference yesterday for a timeline. No one was capable of giving a timeline yesterday. I have audio from the doctors as well, which I'll play probably after a break here in just a bit. But here's President Trump trying to answer a question about what timelines look like for reopening the economy.
So I'm not going to go in terms of dates, but I think we're going very quickly now. I really believe. I think we're going to have a lot of states open relatively soon. We're beating the date. I said a date of May 1st, and, here we are. And I think you're going to have some nice surprises over the next few days, and that'll be before. And that's big stuff. Some of those states are big. They're big stuff, big, very important states. And it's going to be added on. And as we look, I don't want anyone coming back that isn't in position to come back. The last thing we want is for, let's say, a New York to come back too soon or a New Jersey to come back too soon. We want them to come back when they're ready. But
yes, and he's going to give that authority to the governors, as he says.
They're really heading in a good direction, and I think it'll be much faster than people think. I think it'll be quicker, but it's got to be safe.
Yes, it has to be safe. That is the idea. President Trump has said several times in the recent past that any life is too many. One life is too many. If we can prevent any loss of life, we will do everything we can to do it. And obviously, you've seen that over the last few days, the last few months, where we have done everything we can to mitigate the horribleness that is this COVID-19 fight. There's a bunch of medical things happening, too, which I'll talk about later on in the show. There's a bunch of progress there, and there is hope that by the time we get to the summer, that something like the coronavirus outbreak, the transmission rate of it will start to slow because it will be weaker because of its seasonality, which is still not necessarily proven. It's still more of a hope than a true reality. And then we get to the fall where the CDC and other people have warned that there could be a return of the spread of this. There could be a reigniting of the harsher parts of this. And at that point, you hope to have more medical progress. I'm not sure that you have a vaccine that's actually available then. And obviously, it would be people's decision whether or not they go that road. But there may be a lot more treatments by then. We all can hope. One more quick piece of audio, and then I probably should take a break to start the show. This is Craig Collins again, filling in for Chad Benson. He was asked President Trump about the protesting going on in Michigan. He said that he believes that a lot of the people there will listen to him. He then was asked even further about that protest and how he sees that happening. This is where he mentions how the governors will be involved in the decision-making for reopening the economy, et cetera, reopening their individual states. But this is a response to a follow-up question regarding the protesting in Michigan, which if you're not aware of, I don't know how, but people have actually come together. They blocked drives. They tried to create a big, giant traffic jam, essentially because they are unhappy with the decision-making in their state, and they would like to not have these shutdowns that you've seen across the entire country. But here's part of that conversation from yesterday's press conference from the coronavirus task force.
I think they're listening. I think they listen to me. They seem to be protesters that like me and respect this opinion, and my opinion is the same as just about all of the governors. They all want to open. Nobody wants to say shut, but they want to open safely. So do I. But we have large sections of the country right now that can start thinking about opening. There'll be some mitigation, and they'll keep it going for a period of time, including masks, by the way, in areas that you wouldn't even think. I asked a question today. I said, why would they wear masks in Wyoming or Montana or North Dakota? And that's if somebody should come in from an area that isn't so successful in terms of what they've done. So that will be a governor's choice.
That will be a governor's choice. That's what he says. Anyone that's been scared that the president might do things a different way. And granted, I don't know that he couldn't. There's still questions to me as to what he could and couldn't do. But this is a team player right now. And I know that might be cringeworthy for some people who feel a certain way about the guy. And it's a shame that that's the thing. That's the reaction you have to all of this, because I've seen it. I've talked to a lot of people who just hate everything that President Trump does, everything, even when what he's doing, and all the audio I just played demonstrates that he's going to listen to his medical professionals. There's no fight with Dr. Fauci that's imagined for anyone that thinks that it's a real thing. Those two are not at odds the way that the regular news is trying to tell you they are, and that Fauci is going to get fired any single day. Granted, every once in a while, I think the president needs to remind Dr. Fauci that, hey, we're on the same team here, but it's not what everyone thinks it is. He listens to his medical professionals, and he's allowing the governors to make decisions. That's the real story. Whatever else you hear out there in the world is some version of the real story that I don't always understand. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in today on a Friday. I promise we'll have fun. We have a lot more audio to get to, though, from the medical professionals, how they outline what this looks like, reopening the economy, reopening states. It's a 3-phase plan, and I'll talk about it after this.
Check out our Chad Benson Show Facebook page where you can hang out or hang your grievances out to dry. This is Chad Benson.
It's Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson, actually. He will be back on Monday. There are fun stories out there in the world. I know that everyone there's actually something called doom scrolling. I'm not sure if you've heard this new term. That's where you just sit on your phone or on the computer and you scroll through story after story. They're all horrible because there's so much sad and bad news out there in the world that so many of us are doom scrolling. I'm an expert, though, at avoiding the doom scroll. And so I'm going to try to help you guys out with that a little bit if I can. One story that I really liked was John Kraskinski hosting a virtual prom and I'll talk about that in a second if I have time. But before I do that, I have to get to an even more fun story out of Pittsburgh, because this is just the kind of thing that we all probably would want to do, and yet so many of us can't. We can't all do this and succeed the way that Olive did. By the way, just the fact that her name is Olive makes me tremendously happy. She is a 93-year-old woman who went viral. She was covered by KDKA, in Pittsburgh, the local station. She wanted beer. That is an essential item for Olive. She was running out. I think she was down to her last couple cans. So she put a little sign up. She put it in her window. Someone must have snapped a photo and put it on the social medias. All it says is, I need more beer. That photo was shared more than 5 million times. I feel like Dr. Evil when I say that number, 5 million times. That is a lot of times for people to desperately want to help Olive out. When we saw Olive's message, this is someone quoted who's a huge fan of beer, of course. We knew we had to jump at the chance to not only connect with someone who brought a smile to our faces during the pandemic, but also gave us a special opportunity to say thanks for being a Coors Light fan, because I guess that's her beer of choice. That is a Coors spokesperson speaking about that. She has cases and cases of beer, over 150 bottles now available in the house. She will be stocked up for a while, although based on how Olive is and the fact that she'd put a sign up saying she needs more beer, 150 bottles, that might not be that long. She might ask for restock sooner than the rest of us would assume. But for now, she's okay. You should look for that photo on the social medias. I'll actually put it up on my profile, The Craig Collins Show on Facebook. You can check it there. Maybe we'll share it on the Chad Benson one, too. But it's just a wonderful story. And certainly, Olive seems to understand what's most important in life. You got to have the beer. Real quick, though, John Kraskinski is also going to host a virtual prom. You know what? I'll talk about it after this, because my question, and I'd love for people to tell me on social media or however, is he the right choice? Is there a better choice for a virtual prom tonight than Kraskinski? I'm not sure that I say no. I'm just not sure who the right guy is. But this is Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson. A lot more show coming up. Stick with us.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Well, kind of. It's actually Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson. Chad is back on Monday. It is Friday. I want to have fun on Friday. I just asked a question before my last break about who should host a virtual prom. The Office star John Kraskinski, who actually also has some pretty good YouTube stuff out there right now if you want to go look at it. It's a bunch of just feel-good stories, and I'm proud of the guy for putting those things out there. I don't always agree with him, but I like that stuff. He is going to host a virtual prom. And I think he's a really good choice, but I'd love to know via our Facebook page or just any way you can tweet at us. Let us know who you think should be the prom choice. I think if we geared it toward a person still in high school, I was thinking maybe a Justin Bieber. There's a lot of options out there. I know that Kara, my producer today, has mentioned that Marvel stars might make a lot of sense, and I think she's particularly friendly or fond of Captain America. So a Chris Evans might be an option too, but let us know on social media pages, because that might be a little bit of fun. John Kraskinski is doing it, and I'm not trying to replace the guy. And I think it even starts at like 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight. He'll even DJ, which is going to be very interesting. But that's something going on in the world that's a little bit more lighthearted. Before we keep chatting about stuff like that, huge news yesterday out of the Coronavirus Task Force press conference about restarting the economy. One of the questions asked selfishly, and actually I saw a bunch of stuff trending on Twitter yesterday, what people miss most about sports. And the number one thing that trended made me laugh pretty hard. It actually was when a defensive back celebrates an overthrow when he gets beat. So when he's beaten and the guy's wide open in front of him, and then the quarterback just misses by a bit, that celebration is the number one thing people miss about sports right now. And we wouldn't even have it, by the way. That's unfair. It should be a baseball-specific thing because football would not be going on right now. But hey, okay. Well, maybe the XFL, which was kind of successful. But Dr. Fauci was asked this exact question. When do sports return? What does that look like? What phase, et cetera? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, yesterday's coronavirus task force laid out 3 individual phases for reopening the economy. Each phase would require a 14-day period of reduction in influenza-like illness, which would be assumed to be COVID-19, a downward trajectory of COVID-19 specific symptoms, or if you have a lot of cases in a certain area, a downward trajectory of the amount of documented cases, a downward trajectory in the amount of testing needed, positive testing, et cetera. There's a bunch of different caveats to how we progress from phase 1 to 2 to 3. But essentially, people were asking, at what phase do we get sports back? And Dr. Fauci fielded that question.
The answer is, it is conceivable that we will be able to do that. I think there will always have to be attention to making sure that we don't do all that packing in together. I think we'll be able to have sports events in that phase where you actually have participants there. I'm not sure you're going to be able to do that uniformly and evenly temporally with everyone, but when people get to that phase, paying attention to the fact that if there is a rebound of any sort, that when you're in that phase, you can respond to that, or you put it back and go in the other way. So the flexibility is that there may be some setbacks. I mean, let's face it, this is uncharted water. There may be some setbacks that we may have to pull back a little and then go forward. But John, the direct answer to your question, I do see us getting more towards normal.
More toward normal, especially by phase 3. Phase 3 would be after 28 days of downward trajectory of cases and or symptoms, testing positive, et cetera. You'd have a 14-day period. You move from phase 1 to phase 2. If the same thing happened again, you move from phase 2 to phase 3. So that is the kind of thing that we would hope to see over the next few days, weeks, months, et cetera. There is hope that in certain areas that have very little, if not no cases, there are some counties, as was mentioned yesterday, that have absolutely no cases of COVID-19. And in those areas, if you're locked down, if you're part of the shutdown because the state as a whole is telling you to do it, you have to admit it would be confusing in some of those spots to be doing this too if there have been 0 confirmed positive cases. So those are probably going to be the first spots to go. We'll all do this via some sort of like sports draft in a way where like certain areas will get chosen based on their numbers and other places, unfortunately, won't be able to go yet. But it was tremendously exciting, at least to me, I will admit, tremendously exciting yesterday to hear from the president and to hear from the medical professionals talking about how eventually we're going to get back to normal. It's going to happen. We all knew that. You know, obviously this can't go on forever. And the news is so sad and so difficult to manage if you're stuck at home and not even interacting with a lot of people every single day. It's hard to deal with that. And yet it will all return to normal. And that's as hopeful as a message as you could possibly get. Real quick, because I think it is important to revisit it too. Dr. Birx tried to outline some of this criteria. I have a lot of audio from that conversation that took place yesterday at the coronavirus task force conversation, not today. For anyone wondering where this audio came from, it's yesterday's. But I think it's tremendously important to listen to it. She is outlining what I just said, that the steps, the different phases, the 14-day period, et cetera. She's specific to employers at a certain point, to even schools and gyms, which is, I think, exciting for a lot of parents probably, the prospect of schools eventually reopening, although I think she's threw some cold water on that. But here is a little of what Dr. Birx was saying the other day.
Phase 1 begins with all vulnerable individuals, including those with comorbidities, continuing to shelter in place and ensuring that those that first go out into the public are not those that are most vulnerable to bad outcomes in this disease. And then ensuring that we continue to do 6 feet maximum physical distancing in public spaces, continuing to avoid large gatherings and all non-essential travel.
Yeah. The large gatherings is a phase 1 thing. To employers, she had a little bit of a statement as far as what they can and can't do. And honestly, if you're teleworking right now, you might be stuck teleworking, especially if you're someone in an at-risk group.
For the employers, if a vulnerable population needs to return to work and cannot be teleworking, there should be special accommodations for all vulnerable populations, as well as options for teleworking. We believe every employee should encourage work return in phases, from 20% or 25% to 40% to 50%. And again, minimize all non-essential travel.
Yep. And then finally, when she talks about schools, she talks about gyms, getting your hair cut, et cetera. Those are the kind of things that we all hope. I very much hope. I need a haircut real bad. I don't know if you do. And maybe that's more fun to put out on the social media if you're willing to do it via Twitter or Facebook for the Chad Benson Show. just send us how long your hair is. Just give us a quick shot. Maybe throw it up in whatever kind of hairstyle you can possibly manage. But if you're someone who hasn't gotten a haircut in a while, and most of us are, and you don't mind bragging, and I use that air quotes to brag, give us a quick peek. I don't know that I want to do it. I don't know that I'm willing. Chad might be, but Greg's not. So here's one more piece of audio from Dr. Birx talking about these different phases and being more specific to schools, gyms, etc.
If the schools are already closed, they should remain closed. All visits to senior living facilities and hospitals should continue to be prohibited. Large venues, including sit-down dining, can only be operated under strict physical distancing protocols and maintaining those 6 feet. Gyms could open if they, again, could adhere to strict physical distancing, and elective surgeries can resume on an outpatient basis.
So that is, again, all specific to phase one. So all the conversation she's having is the thing that's going to happen first for people all over the country, hopefully. When we get to phase one, things like gyms would already be capable of opening with strict social distancing guidelines. That is exciting. Obviously, the school thing, not so great for phase one yet. Employers allowing people to start coming back to work would be really, really nice. And even restaurants specifically being capable of opening. Something that I've heard a lot. A lot of people have asked that question to me. You know, we shut down all these restaurants. Why couldn't we find a way to just keep people really separate and make it work? And I don't know. There's probably a lot of reasons why maybe the waiter and waitress would be responsible for making that impossible. But yet, it would be exciting to start getting to those phases. So let's hope that we see that in a bunch of the communities going forward. And let's hope that the one thing we don't see, which they continued to mention, was that if cases start to come back, if you start to see a surge in the return of COVID-19, you got to pump the brakes on a lot of this plan. And that would be obviously about as disappointing as it would be for us. I also heard that Joe Biden spoke this morning about it, and I apologize for my entertainment on this. I don't apologize. I don't know why I apologize, because to me, I don't know what the heck just happened. The guy had a response to how bad everything is right now, and when I listen to the words, I still can't really parse it. I can't really understand what the message was, and so I think, and I saw this shared a few places, one of the reasons we want the big events to come back is we'd love to see a debate between President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, candidate for presidency on the other side of the aisle, because I think that's going to be interesting. I think this might be must-watch TV because you're going to get answers that sound like this.
Things that have to be done. There's during World War II, where Roosevelt came up with a thing that was totally different than he called it the World War II. He had the War Production Board.
Huh? What? What did he? I don't understand, Joe. The question was simple. He's like, what are we going to do? How do we handle this whole crisis? And Joe, you want to hear it again? Does anyone want to hear that again to tell me what he said? Because I still don't really know. Things
that have to be done. There's during World War II, where Roosevelt came up with a thing that was totally different than he called it the World War II. He had the War Production Board.
So does he want to bring back a war production? I don't understand. And I more importantly just desperately want events to come back so this man can debate the president of the United States. I want to see that happen so badly, because I just don't even know what to expect of it. And I might be there with notes and trying to understand it, and I still might not have any idea. If you're going to say things, and this is coming from a guy in radio who probably makes mistakes too, mumbles through my thoughts sometimes as well, have a better idea of what the message is going into the sentence. Because that's the thing. I don't know that his brain totally communicates with his mouth to tell him the plan. So as his mouth starts moving, the brain hasn't given the actual plan yet to former Vice President Joe Biden. And so that's what you get. You get a lot of mumbling and stumbling, and then eventually a reference to something that happened during a world war that is still very much confusing me. All right, I'm getting some messages on my social media page. That's facebook.com/Craig Collins Show. Please reach out to the Twitter page or the Chad Benson Show pages as well, and let us know who you'd like to host a virtual prom. Either one that you would have had years ago, because obviously a lot of the listeners here are probably not currently going to have their prom, which has been canceled, obviously, for high school kids. But who would you wish from a celebrity world would have hosted it. John Kraskinski will be hosting one for kids that'll happen tonight at 8 o'clock. Your kid might be going, and I say air quotes going. It's all online. But they might be going. And John is a good choice. Obviously, his character in The Office, tremendously popular, a snarky guy, a smarter than everybody else kind of guy, but in a good way. A very likable character that he played there. And John seems like a nice enough guy. So I think that makes sense. He wouldn't be my choice. That's not the pick that I would have. Right now, my pick would probably be a little odd because I don't think the guy would want to do it at all. But with the documentary coming out on Sunday, Michael Jordan, if he could host a prom, and he probably would just be competitive the whole time, which you're going to see in this documentary that's coming out in a few days, he even said, actually, I think yesterday, it's going to make fans not like him and think he's a huge jerk. But if Michael Jordan could have hosted my prom, that would have been the best thing ever. I would have just chatted with that guy, left my date in the corner, and been like, Mike, I got a bunch of questions about 98, and that documentary is going to answer all of them for me. So thank God. But who would you pick? Who would be your prom MC of choice? As I said, my producer, Kara, went with Chris Evans. Captain America is not a bad pick, and a bunch of Marvel people are probably very popular on that list. I would assume Scarlett Johansson would be a popular pick among the younger men that would want to see a certain person host it. But tell us on the Facebook pages for either my show, The Craig Collins Show, Chad's show, The Chad Benson Show, his Twitter, whatever. And if you're willing, share a picture of your hair, because I do want to see how bad it's gotten for so many of us, because I sadly have very curly hair, and I keep it very short because I know it's not it's kind of like a Mark Ruffalo, a Hulk haircut, and I don't really like it that way, and yet it's happening, and I don't want my wife to cut it. She's been begging me to just let her cut the hair, and I said, I can't do it yet, hun, but we might get there. I don't know. Quick break and a lot more coming up on The Chad Benson Show.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
This is The Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in, though. Chad will be back on Monday. Can't wait to have him back, I'm sure. But I love being here. I'm thrilled to be here on a Friday. There's a couple of fun stories in the news. One that I saw, my producer, Kara, just sent it to me, too. I like this one a lot. Michael Cohen must just be the most grateful guy. I don't know how this keeps happening to the guy. He lands on things in a good way. He's going to get out of jail early. He's going to get released from prison early because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Michael's just got to be thrilled. I have nothing else to say other than to simply report that fact to you and to let you know that Cohen's out. No word on if the creepy porn lawyer guy is going to get out anytime soon, although I think maybe he's also trying. But the fact that Cohen is a guy actually, I think the creepy porn lawyer is already out. You know what? Actually, let me take that back. I believe the guy's already been out and in the world. So again, everyone who's recently been in the news for horrible, terrible things, they are for some reason benefiting in an odd way with all this going on. Another story that I like a lot. I just saw this from my producer as well. Cops had to warn people to wear pants when they went out to grab their mail. And I love both the idea that this was happening and then the idea that the cops are like, we got to tell these people. And it wasn't just like a guy, because I'm sure in every neighborhood, we all have that one neighbor who you've seen before do things that you wish he wouldn't do, and yet he does them. And there's a huge difference, too, by the way. I'm not trying to defend, not trying to admit that I'm one of them, but there's a huge difference between taking the trash out in the dark of night really, really quick and not fully clothing, maybe leaving a shirt off and or maybe a boxer is part of the situation, and doing it in the morning. If you're going to go check your mail, if you're going to go grab a newspaper, if you still get one on your desk or on your front lawn, it's a totally different ballgame to do it right now. But the cops, they had to warn people, and they said, my favorite thing they said on their social media post, you know who you are. You know exactly who you are if you're the kind of person doing this. Totally true. We do. You would absolutely know that, hey, okay, I've broken that rule once or twice. And I don't think speed would be a factor here. Like, if you're a very fast person, I don't know that it would matter, because I think that might be a typical defense I'd get from some of my buddies. Is like, well, yeah, but I'm way faster than the guy next door. He takes 5 minutes to go check the mail. I'm in and out in under 30 seconds. I'm setting world records over here. I don't think that's going to make you any less guilty. I think that we all have to remember that while you're indoors, okay, fine, the rules are off right now. But when you're outdoors, you got to remember you're outdoors. And again, and I'm not trying to admit, and I'm not trying to say anything else. I think there's a huge difference between this and the throwing the trash out late at night under the cover of darkness. That is at times something that probably more people would break, and I'm not sure that I would see that as the same problem. I had mentioned this earlier in the show, too, and I really did love it. People were tweeting the specific things that they miss most about sports, and I'd love to hear that from you, too, on the Chad Benson Twitter page, Facebook page, whatever. What do you miss most about sports? The number one highlight for a lot of people was when a defensive back celebrates a quarterback overthrowing a wide-open receiver. So if you get beat bad and then you're looking at the guy wide open, waving his hand and seeing that ball come, and then it goes right over the receiver's head, you got to be thrilled. Football players a few feet from a pile who passionately signal to their team to get the loose ball. There's absolutely no evidence of a loose ball, but they're pretending there's one. That kind of stuff is also a lot of fun. The way quarterbacks angrily unsnap their chin strap after they throw something like an interception. A lot of these are football related, though, and that's just not the sport that's going on right now, so I don't totally get it. But this is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. It's a Friday. Let's have some fun today. But I do have a bunch more news to report as well. Back in a minute.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Kinda. I keep saying kinda. This is the Craig Collins Show. Probably not that kinda. I mean, Chad Benson's a tremendously talented human who'll be back on Monday. I'm a somewhat talented radio guy who's filling in today. My name is Craig Collins. I'm thrilled to be with you guys throughout the remainder of the show today. I got a bunch of important newsy stuff, especially from yesterday's press conference for the coronavirus task force. It's a big deal. Talked about reopening the economy, talked about doing it in phases. Certain places could start doing it earlier than others based on the amount of cases you've seen there. They pointed out correctly that several communities throughout the United States have absolutely no cases of COVID-19. So those places got to really jump and relish this opportunity. There was no timeline given out, and there were a lot of different caveats to the ways in which this would happen. 14-day periods of a downtrend in either cases or actual illness, symptoms, etc. It could just be people testing positive, whatever. You got to see downturns and trends, and then you start slowly reopening the economy, slowly reopening the world, essentially, via the United States in these 14-day different phase periods. You got to keep repeating it. So you get 14 days of good news, you do one thing, you get 14 more, you do something else. I will continue to cover that throughout the show today because I thought it was tremendously important yesterday, and I know so many of us desperately want to get back to the way things were. We got to do it slow, but everybody's saying it's possible, which was very exciting to hear. I do, just shifting gears, and because it's Friday, I do have other stories that pique my interest for different reasons. One of them's from Pizza Hut, and I don't know why I'm so fascinated by this, and I've been called naive by some of the other people I've talked to about this. They recently came out with a new product that they're very proud of. They're calling it the tamper-proof safety seal for their pizza box. And they're making sure that you know that no one's touched your food but you. So they take it out of the 400-degree oven, which I think is part of their little ad in their press release. And they say after they put the seal on, it is closed to anyone but you till it gets to your home. The reason I'm so entertained by this story is it actually made me far more worried about my pizza, my delivery of pizza, than I ever was. Was this necessary? Did we need the tamper-proof seal in order to stop the delivery guy from getting handsy with my pie? Is that a thing we needed? Does he go for the pepperoni, the sausage piece, or does he pick off something else? I don't know what's going on. And obviously now that they're the first ones to do it, probably everyone else will start taking these steps. But at the same time, like every so often a company has a meeting and they think they came up with a really great idea. They're like, oh, you know what we need? Let's get that safety seal on the pizza. And then as the regular customer, I think you and I are thinking, you needed it? Like we had to, it's a thing you had to have? Because I just assumed that after it got out of the oven and was put in the box that no one went back in. I figured there'd be no revisiting my pizza till me, but apparently now, and maybe because of the fear of whatever, you have that safety seal out there. But in reality, it just makes me have a bunch more questions. If they were ever to do a press conference, the Pizza Hut, and throw out that idea, I would have been the only reporter. I would have been the annoying CNN guy. I would have been the Jim Acosta in that situation with just a bunch more questions than anyone needed to ask. Like, hold on, wait a minute, all pizzas? Are you saying the pepperoni was at risk? I've had several. I'm going to have to do a bunch of investigative reporting now to figure out what's going on. In other news, I saw a story about how we can handle the stress of going and or not going to the grocery store. If you're in an at-risk group, the idea is to find somebody else to go for you. And I love the fact, I've loved a lot of the ways in which we've come together during some of the craziness of this time. And one way we've done that, there's a bunch of volunteers, younger people, that have popped up and been willing to go shopping for people in at-risk groups. And I think that's tremendous. I think the volunteers who are disinfecting and dropping off groceries to people that don't feel really comfortable going out. I was at the grocery store the other day, and there was an elderly guy shopping alone. And he looked at me and he goes, "Have you seen toilet paper anywhere?" And I had to tell him no. I had to say, "I'm sorry, but I've been down the aisles you're about to go down. It's not there." And I could just see the sadness, the frustration in the guy's voice because he probably doesn't want to be out in general. And I don't know how many stores he's been to. I don't know how much he's done. And so I love the fact that there's ways to help people like that. And actually, I was willing to give him some of my toilet paper at my house, but I just didn't know how to execute that. I thought that'd be a really weird offer. I'd be like, "Hey, man, if you need, you can follow me home." I don't think that would have gone well. I think he would have said, no, I'm okay, random stranger who just offered to show me where your house is. Like, I think that would have been the wrong move. But it was in my brain to try to help because, and it's not that I stocked up. We went a different road. And a road that I promised I wasn't going to talk about on the show today because you guys don't know me. If you knew me, if we could get a better relationship here, I could open up about this a little more. But I've been talking about it on my radio show. I bought a bidet. I bought one right before all this happened. Like I heard about some ideas and I have one and I know it's a crazy thing. I know it's very strange. I wasn't really prepared for what it was when I put it in the house and it was just a little add-on to the toilet. I guess it's tremendously popular. People were buying them in mass right when these sort of things happen. But so even though I never stocked up on toilet paper, I'd be willing to give a little bit of it out. So we'll see. We'll see if I ever wind up just taking some with me to a grocery store and handing them out to strangers. But even then, I imagine people would look at me strange. If I'm walking around with my own toilet paper at the grocery store, like, "Here, take this for free," I don't think anyone takes it. These are weird times we live in, but I still think you don't trust a stranger. Stranger danger immediately would pop up in your brain if you got a radio guy just standing out there handing out toilet papers just from his own supply. One other story I saw that I enjoyed a lot, and again, trying to be lighthearted on a Friday, there's a bunch of bigger important news that we will get to throughout the show. I promise not to keep you too far from that stuff. But a Connecticut man broke into a restaurant, closed restaurant, spent 4 days eating food and drinking like crazy there. And I would never advocate crime. This guy went to jail. Very good that he did. His name's Luis Ortiz. He needs to go to jail because he can't do that. A lot of us probably want to. You know, if you're being honest, if we're in the trust tree for a second, all of us as a group, if you drive by your favorite spot and it's closed, you can't get it at all, or even just the idea that you could drink for 4 days unabashed in a bar, a lockdown bar by yourself, maybe play a bunch of darts, play a little bit of pool. I don't know if they'd have any other games available. Just go nuts. I think a lot of us would relish that opportunity. They might want to do that. In all honesty, that would actually be within the guidelines as far as social distancing. If a bar were to give some amount of money, just say like for 40 grand, you can have our bar for a day, go in alone and do whatever you want. There's people out there that would pay that. Whatever amount of money it is. They damage things, drink the entire stock out of the place, walk out with bottles, etc. Maybe that's a new business. Sort of like the smash 'em up places you can go to where you just rent a room and you break everything in it. There should be a way, especially for some of these bars that really want to get all their supply gone as quickly as possible. Maybe just let somebody rent it for 24 or 48 hours and pull a Luis, because this guy seemed to have a great time. And he didn't run. Like, that's the other thing about his crime. Once he got into the bar, he was fully willing to be caught whenever he was caught. He drank 70 bottles of liquor during the 4-day period. He is accused of stealing and or drinking 70 bottles of liquor. Bottles. I don't know how that's humanly possible, in all honesty. You got to imagine that a lot of that is still somewhere. There's got to be a stash somewhere, but the New Haven Police Department confirmed that there was security footage, and he just stayed for 4 days inside a restaurant, eating the food, the liquor, the beer. He must have been cooking for himself. I mean, put yourself in the guy's shoes. He's just hanging out. He's like, I got in, man. I'm here till this thing is over and or I get caught. And I'm not advocating. It's a bad idea. Do not do it. At the same time, I'm just trying to be honest with everyone out there in the world. I think that if you were walking by your favorite spot, you would contemplate just a little bit how fun it would be to get free run of that place entirely on your own. It's the kind of thing we all think about. The crazy thoughts are in everyone's brain a lot more than they've ever been. Another story I saw out there in the news, this is Price is Right. They're running back recorded episodes. And just the other day, I guess they ran an episode where a guy won tickets to the Stanley Cup. And that's really sad to watch because no one has any idea. When you watch these old episodes of these shows, it's actually kind of surreal. I was actually doing that with one of the singing shows. My wife loves the American Idol. She loves The Voice. She loves all the singing shows. And so we're watching American Idol. I think this was a couple weeks ago. And there was an episode where they referenced all the people getting sick. There were people getting the flu or something, they thought, while they were doing competition rounds, like the bigger rounds. And you're sitting there in the current world we live in, watching this dated, taped thing, thinking to yourself, oh, my God, like, I wonder what this is, how this is all going, because, you know, they don't have the perspective we have, and they couldn't have known. They had no idea when they made that episode that at the time it aired, we'd be in the situation we were all in. So it was surreal to see that happen. And for the thing that's gone viral now, for the Price is Right, I imagine they'll make that right. The value of the prize was $13,000. By the way, so it's a solid chunk of change, even after taxes. But I assume that guy can just get a payout because it would be pretty sad. And he seemed very excited. Maybe he's a hockey fan. And I'm going to keep talking about this throughout the show. I'd love to hear the things you most miss about sports because there's something so cathartic about it. There's something so valuable to so many of us, the escapism of watching and throwing our hat in the ring. I'm a huge Yankee fan, just unabashedly huge. And I know I'm losing listeners left and right now by saying that, but I am. And I've been following everything that's going on off the field right now, and there's just not a lot. There's just not enough happening. I want to see more of what we saw the other day out of the NBA. They did that horse thing. I would love to see an at-home home run derby. Put all the baseball players in their backyards. I don't care how far the fence is, and just let them go at it. Have a kid pitch to them and see how many home runs they can hit in their individual, backyard situations. I would be entertained. I would watch every second of that if it were on the internet and or just regular television, because we're desperate for entertainment too, in my opinion. Another thing that's very true, and maybe not for everyone as much as me, I'm desperate for sports entertainment. I can't wait for the Michael Jordan documentary. Just can't wait for it to debut on Sunday. And I appreciate that Michael Jordan was a very competitive human. Very, very competitive. So I think he started to get worried about the way people will react to that information, and yet I don't think they should. One last thing. This is more of a news thing, and then I will take a break. Mitt Romney is the only GOP senator that's been left off of every single congressional group that the president has created. Mitt Romney is the only guy that's not a part of it. He's obviously the former presidential nominee from 2012. He is also the only guy that voted to impeach the president. He did it on just one of the 2 counts. He acquitted on obstruction, but he did vote to convict on the abuse of power charge. And see, you got to remember all the time when it's President Trump that's in office that if you do something wrong, if you go a certain way, it's going to cost you. And so Romney, there's like 20 congressional Democrats that have been tapped to serve on different forces, task forces, etc. And they include people who did vote to convict the guy. And yet Romney, the only GOP guy that did it, not on anything. And I don't think people are really all that sad about it. I imagine you're not crushed by the idea that Romney's not throwing his opinion in there. And it's just the most fascinating and interesting of things to see the way that this always plays out. Because there's always an end game, in my opinion. There's always a second step that a lot of people do not predict happening. And then all of a sudden the president does a thing and you're like, oh, okay, I see what happened here. Now I get it. And I probably regret it. All right, I got to take a break. A lot more coming up in just a bit. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
For details.
Wanna be, boys? Give me a bowl of chili with plenty of peppers. One Mexican heartburn. Why don't you mugs grow up?
The Chad Benson Show, where independent, a la carte thinkers have a seat at the table and a voice in the dialogue.
I'll have what she's having.
This is Chad Benson.
No, it's not. It's Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson. Chad is back on Monday, but I'm thrilled to be here for the day. I love talking to you guys, and it's a Friday, so we're trying to have a little bit more fun. I got all the relevant information, all the news stuff you need coming up in a little bit, but I just got this story from my producer, Kara, today, who had no idea that I work very closely to my wife right now because, like many a person, I work from home for all the jobs that I do, so I have a whole setup. I'm trying to do my thing. I actually call it my radio basement bunker, which some of the listeners that I have on some other stuff I'm on have coined for me, and I love that idea. She sits across from me. She pays attention to my show. Barely likes me as a radio host, I think the wife does. But this story she'll love from Kara, so thank you for the help. Tom Hardy is going to read bedtime stories to kids on TV in the UK. I'm sure, as I've heard from both the women that I talked to about this just seconds ago during the break, that there's going to be a lot of ladies that tune in that might not even have children to listen to this guy speak. And I'm not sure that I love that, but I'm sure it's a thing that's going to happen. The BBC booked the guy for their Sea Babies, their bedtime story slot back in 2016, and he's going to return in just about a week or so on the 27th to do it all over again. The guy will read at least a bedtime story directly into a camera without a commercial interruption for, and I say it again with air quotes, as I watch the eyes of my wife just light up, this will be for, air quotes, children. For children, he's going to entertain them via this whole thing, and probably a bunch of people. My wife will just have to watch this on her own. She'll shove me out of the room, and she'll just be like, this is my time with Tom, and I don't care. I can't believe that this kind of stuff. It's going to be so popular, though. Like, any TV station can steer into one of those worlds and have tremendous success right now. It doesn't matter what they say and or do. If ABC, Fox, NBC, whoever wanted to air a similar product with an equally attractive lady, a bunch of guys will tune in just for the sake of tuning in. Even if, again, it's a bedtime story. They could sing Disney songs. It doesn't matter. If you have a Scarlett Johansson up there doing something like that, I think that there's going to be high ratings at this point, and it is what it is. I actually have a story that I haven't touched on yet where thirst tweeting, and I don't even know if I want to explain what that is, but essentially it's when an attractive person throws up a suggestive photo hoping that people comment on how attractive they are, but thirst tweeting is at an all-time high right now, all-time high. The most popular thing it's ever been on that platform. There's other social media platforms where it's much more common to do it, but even on the Twitter now, people turn to it, take the photo, probably take a bunch of versions of the photo to get it right, and then throw it up on the social media and just wait. They just hope that everyone goes out there and says, oh, man, I'd love to hear a bedtime story from you, because I imagine that's what we're all doing. But on the 27th, he's going to, it's ridiculous. It's silly. That's not, you know who needs to do it? A guy with an amazing, iconic voice. You don't need a guy like this. You need a Morgan Freeman. You need someone else to go ahead and read the bedtime story, even a Samuel L. Jackson, who's done a bedtime story before quite well, that I'm probably not suggesting to everyone to go look up out there, but it's out there and it's entertaining for sure. But those are the stories that a lot of us might look for. But no, the Tom Hardy thing, the ratings are going to be through the roof in the UK for that. And honestly, they're even going to be on the internet if they're streaming it for places like right here, right where I am. I can see it happening. One other thing that I'll touch on more after a break, the quarantine mustache is kind of our version, the guy version of cutting your bangs. That's what I've seen a lot on social media, too. People are very excited about growing out the mustache. I can't do it. If you're doing it and you want to send a photo to Chad Benson and not explain it at all, just show your favorite mustache. Show what you're rocking right now to the Facebook page, the Twitter page. Don't explain it. Every time I fill in, I love that kind of thing. Don't tell them why you're doing it, but do it, please, to show them what your bangs look like. All right, a lot more coming up on the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in on a Friday.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Actually, it's Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson today. Chad is back on Monday. I'm going to start with the least shocking news you've heard in this segment. Least shocking news, and honestly, probably just the beginnings of it. China earlier today increased their Wuhan death toll by 50%, saying they underestimated the number of people that died from COVID-19 at the epicenter of the outbreak by 50%. The country added 1,290 deaths in its readjusted total. The death toll now in just the area of Wuhan, 3,869 in that city. China said this was not a cover-up. Oh, of course not. No. That's not what it is at all. Just a readjustment of numbers based on new information coming from places like prison, care facilities, etc. The timing of this adjustment comes after President Trump criticized China for its underreporting of deaths and cases at the start of the outbreak, as well as other countries that threw their voice into the ring. President Emmanuel Macron of French, I don't know why I do it that way. I know it's not good. I throw it in there, pretend that I can do it. I'm not trying to do it to be hoity-toity. I just can't say that name Macron without pretending to be French for a second. He added his voice to the growing skepticism about China. Now, he actually said there are clearly things that have happened that we don't know about. And this actually all goes back to the WHO as well, the World Health Organization and the funding for it. NBC is now actually sending Facebook users that they alert to being exposed to misinformation about coronavirus to consult with the World Health Organization, which some would say is probably a mistake. Some would say that going that road might also not get you the most reliable of information. Maybe the CDC is a better option. Maybe there's better spots to go for an NBC than the World Health Organization, but that's what they're doing right now in a blog post that they had written. The vice president of Facebook, Guy Rosen, also said that announcement is out there in the world, that you can go to the World Health Organization. And that's not a good move. That's, in my opinion, is not that. I would go other places if it were me. And I would certainly never consult Chinese numbers on any of this stuff. And look at it, 50% higher recently, and probably going to continue to go up as everywhere else in the world has seen a starkly different experience than what they've seen there. Another thing that I saw, it leaked out, it's a result for remdesivir. Remdesivir is one of the potential solutions, one of the potential treatments, I should say, to COVID-19. There was a study going on by one of the drug manufacturers that was looking at a little over 2,000, total cases. There were 125 different really sick COVID-19 patients that the University of Chicago medicine actually studied. Out of the 125, and these were people that were very ill, where the outcome is not good at all. The 125 people were all put on a remdesivir. 113 had severe cases of the disease. An overwhelming majority of the people recovered within 6 days after receiving a daily infusion. This is not definitive proof. This is a very small-scale study and one that was going on in larger form with the drug maker itself. But out of the University of Chicago, with some information that leaked, a really, really good result. Only 2 patients lost their lives, and these were people in very high risk or very bad illness states. 113 of the 125 were able to get quite a bit better, and a majority of the people rapidly recovered within 6 days. And as I said, just 2 fatalities in the group. So honestly, I think we will continue to see things like this be a huge part of what came out of the coronavirus task force conversation yesterday, as far as the phasing return of our economy, the phasing return of civilization, I guess, for us, for the most part, the way we go back to normal life. That's the kind of thing that you will see continue to uptick in a variety of ways, and hopefully without any sort of pulling back at it, any sort of reemergence of cases. I mean, we're getting closer and closer to the summer, and the other feeling here for sure, and it's not for sure, I should say, there's no proof of it, but the hope, that's the best way to articulate it. The hope is that this starts to wane a little bit, that it's somewhat seasonal, and that we don't have to really truly fight it like we are now during the summer. We would only really get back to the current situation by the time we reach the fall. That is the hope. That I know that the COVID-19, the infection itself, the virus, can live in hot and cold temperatures, in warmer climates, in warmer countries. It has still been capable of spread. But seasonality is not necessarily just tied to the temperature. So that there is other reasons why it might fade into the background for a little bit, especially here. Or at least there's hopes that might be a thing that they do. Another story I saw, and I talked about earlier, how some police officers had to tell people in Maryland to stop going outside in their undies to grab the newspaper. They needed to stop doing that. Well, the polar opposite thing apparently is happening some places too, and especially with the use of social media to tweet out and brag about it, some people are dressing up fancy to go out and do the trash. Some people are throwing on the full tux, the dress, whatever you have, because they're just so desperate to do whatever they can right now to, be fancy dressed, that they are doing it in large quantities with sometimes even costumes on. There's a viral video of a kid in a taco costume. There's a guy in a full Transformers robot costume just taking out the trash. And these things entertain us wildly right now. Actually, I haven't mentioned this on the show, but I should. There was a viral story that entertained the crap out of me. It's on my my Facebook page, facebook.com/The Craig Collins Show. It's very simplistic. A woman spilled wine on her face. She was sitting down and playing one of those social media games where you got like the bubble over your head and it's trying to land on an answer to a question. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out Snapchat for a day. But people do this. They throw the ticking thing up there, and there are a bunch of different answers are popping up, and you're waiting for which one it lands on. It's essentially like one of those 8 balls that you ask a question to, and it gives you an answer. You see it happening on social media. The woman's laying back, sipping a glass of wine, bumps the wine, spills all over her face. That's the entirety of the video. Viral. Incredibly viral. Everyone's saying, this is my experience in 2020. Like, hashtag, this is what life is like. And I just think that's the perfect example of how desperate we are for entertainment. That's something that admittedly was funny, but probably not funny to the extent that it was as popular as it was just out there in the world and everybody loved it. Yes, I want to see more of this woman spilling more wine on her face. Her social media presence exploded in a day, which made me think, as a radio guy that would always love to have more followers, maybe I just do that. Maybe I do simple but dumb things until people start to follow me, which honestly is just what the internet has always been. I'm not sure that that's really a discovery. The fact that if you do something stupid and put it up on the internet, people will watch. But I might do a lot more of that, because I honestly think that that's the kind of thing that just right now people love it. People can't get enough of the world in which anything and everything that's even mildly entertaining is going to go very, very viral in today's day and age, because it desperately needs to. We need so much more entertainment than what we have, that it's just, it's the kind of thing. I don't know. There's got to be a better way to articulate it. 829. Excuse me. I almost gave out a different phone number. Just call our phone number. I don't have it on me right now. If Garrett can tell it to me in my ear, I almost gave out a phone number to a totally different radio station that I work on. But go ahead and call us and let us know if there's something silly, something viral you found in the world, or find us on Facebook, Twitter, wherever, and let us know why you thought it was so entertaining, especially if it's something as silly and as limited as the things that I'm seeing out there in the world that people are just falling in love with right now, because we got literally nothing else. We got nothing else to do. All right, I should hit a little bit of the serious news of the day, just because it is important. Yesterday at the Coronavirus Task Force, there was a lot of conversations about when and how the economy can reopen. There's been a lot of talk as to how involved the governors in the individual states will be, and that's kind of a ridiculous conversation, in all honesty. And I understand that the desire to push people a certain way, and I think there should be a lot of focus on what the president and his team is advising we do, because his team is built with the best minds in the country, the best minds in the world, telling you how to do things. But governors, of course, will be involved in that process. And Dr. Deborah Birx, who was speaking yesterday at the Coronavirus Task Force, reiterated that as part of her conversation about the different phases in how we slowly reopen the economy. The individual states will be at the mercy at some times of their individual governors on how exactly this plays out, but the plan is there for them to look at and follow.
Again, you have to go through the criteria again of a continuation of another 14-day decline among those criterias that were in the gating. Again, we're asking for all vulnerable individuals shelter in place. We did not put a timeline on any of the phases. We want the governors, with the data that they have, community by community, to be setting up those timelines.
Yeah, now that makes sense. It does. It's a process that you have to involve everyone in. They're going to set up the timelines. They're going to create the ways in which they slowly come back. And certainly there's going to be areas that are much quicker than others at doing that sort of thing. One of the questions that was most interesting to me that happened at the Coronavirus Task Force was also when Dr. Fauci was asked about sports returning, what phase that would be in, and not just sports, any large event. And honestly, this is a way that a lot of businesses make their money too. Sponsoring and/or putting on large events is a big part of the financial budget for some places. And here was the answer to that question regarding both specifically the sports, but any large event. And it's not as far away as we might think.
The answer is it is conceivable that we will be able to do that. I think there will always have to be attention to making sure that we don't do all that packing in together. I think we'll be able to have sports events in that phase where you actually have participants there. I'm not sure you're going to be able to do that uniformly and evenly temporally with everyone, but when people get to that phase, paying attention to the fact that if there is a rebound of any sort, that when you're in that phase, you can respond to that, or you put it back and go in the other way. So the flexibility is that there may be some setbacks. I mean, let's face it, this is uncharted water. There may be some setbacks that we may have to pull back a little and then go forward. But John, the direct answer to your question, I do see us getting more towards normal.
Yeah, I do see us getting more towards normal. That's the kind of thing that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, to eventually, or maybe very quickly in some areas, get back to normal. Shifting gears again to something more fun, because I like making sure that you have the information you need, but it's especially true on a Friday to shift to other things. I saw this story, and I would love just a judge's ruling on it. Tell me how successful you think it's going to be on our social media pages or wherever. A New York guy decided to go a different way as far as finding his next girlfriend. I think there's a lot of conversations about social media right now, the dating apps and how successful they might be in this day and age, especially this current time we live. And so the guy put up a flyer. He went traditional road. He went throughout New York. He found a lot of different areas like Central Park, et cetera, where maybe someone might be jogging. He tried to target the positions that you're most likely to pass, the spots you're most likely to see. And he put up a flyer. It's his picture. The title says, "Seeking Girlfriend for Coronavirus," specifically for coronavirus, which I think is interesting. He describes himself as a healthy, attractive, and well-employed guy. He's in his 30s. He is germ-free, but a quick mention, he's also monogamy-free. He's not looking for a long-term commitment here, and he put that on the flyer. He then says, "Please be healthy, fit, and clean." And I don't know if he needed to put it in that many times, but obviously he's saying, please, make sure that both of us are in the same situation from a health standpoint. And then he included his email. And the biggest reason I talk about a story like this is I'm fascinated as to when and how this gentleman acquired this email. But his email is steadyman4u with the number 4 and the letter U at gmail.com. Steadyman4u. Has he been sitting on that for a long time? Is this the kind of guy that's been using just his email for a while? Or is this completely a prank poster and someone who got that email for who knows what reason is now getting blown up or maybe not blown up with different responses to the ad that's all over New York City? But Steady Man for You is looking for a lady, and he's doing it via flyer throughout New York City for anyone that was interested in wondering. All right, I got to take a break. A lot more coming up. Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
Well, actually, it's Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Chad will be back on Monday. It is a Friday. There's a bunch of important news out there in the world. The restarting of the economy, the plan has been set. It's in place. I will continue to get back to it throughout the day, but I also want to have some fun because you probably want to have some fun on a Friday. I don't want to be the radio version of the doom scroll, where all I do is tell you sad news the whole time, which is what we're doing on social media or on the internet at all when you're scrolling through story after sad story. So here's two good ones. Busch Beer is holding a contest to give a couple free beer for life. You have to qualify by having your wedding had to have been postponed because of the coronavirus pandemic. That's qualification step number 1. And then number 2, you have to post a photo of yourselves along with a plan for how you will celebrate during the pandemic, either by, I guess, just postponing, and that probably won't win, or putting on some sort of virtual wedding. I assume that's what's going to win. And Busch will choose one couple and give them free beer for life. That's free beer for life. And right now, that's tremendously important. So I think that if you're one of those people that are in the first of the two situations, and I don't think you can lie. I'm tempted to lie, but I don't think you can. My wife and I have been married for almost 10 years. I don't think we can win this competition. And yet, maybe I just say we were going to have, no, I'm kidding. Don't lie. Someone who deserves it should win it. But Busch is giving somebody free beer for a year, or free beer, for life. and you probably want to get in on that competition. Another silly story I saw out there in the news is a guy in India was so mad that his wife chose to spend her time sheltering in place with her parents and not him. So the guy's in India. The wife walks out one day. She's like, I'm just going to go visit the parents real quick. Doesn't come back. She's like, I'd rather be over here with them. I'll visit you when everything goes down. But he was so upset. Not only did he decide to leave the relationship, he went and married an ex-girlfriend. And honestly, there's not a lot of ways, depending on how relationships break up, where you turn to an ex, but he had to be incredibly upset, not willing to go through the steps of trying to meet someone new at this time in our lives. And so he turns to an ex. He's like, hey, my wife's hanging out with the parents. I think I might be out of that. What are you up to? I know we had a horrible fight months ago or years ago, whenever it was. And actually, that brings up a separate topic that I've seen a lot in the news in the recent past. People are reaching out to exes, and they're doing it for all kinds of reasons. Maybe people are saying to themselves, now that I've seen the seriousness of life or all the things that are horrible going on, I can forgive that person for that one time that they called me dumb or whatever they did, and I can move on and get past it. Or it's just the other thing. It's that you're very lonely, very desperate, and you don't care that the relationship was terrible, and you're reaching out to the person. But I've seen a lot of advice from the medical professionals, the health professionals saying, do not do this. In no situation should you actually encourage yourself to get back into a relationship that you decided to be done with. Don't reach out. Don't communicate. And if you're the guy in India, you've probably made a tremendous mistake. Although it is weird that the wife would go spend time with the parents and this guy wouldn't be invited. And I'm not seeing for sure that was the case, but it sounds like it's probably the case. He was not invited to be a part of that. So it says a lot. If the world is as crazy as it is right now, and the person you're married to doesn't want to spend time with you, I think you have your answer as to what you should be doing. But no word yet on how happy he is with the ex. No word yet on that situation. I just saw that story in the news today and thought it was very, very interesting. I also saw this, and I only have a little bit to hit it. And you guys, again, don't get to know me well. I'm only filling in every so often for Chad. But I'm an East Coast Italian. I'm from New Jersey originally, and I'm very proud of that fact. And, maybe at some point in my life, there might have been family members who did some things we don't talk about so much. I don't know. And actually, my grandmother jokes a lot that we'll never talk about those things if they exist. And I saw this story that the mob in Italy is giving out supplies to people. In Italy specifically, the mafia has stepped up and decided that they're going to be one of the groups that does everything they can to help their citizens. And it's sort of surreal to see the story, to process the story. But again, and I'm kidding, as an East Coast Italian, a little bit of me is like, hey, good on you. It's a good thing you did right there. I'm very proud of that. All right, I got to take another break. A lot more. Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson. Talk to you guys in a bit.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
For Craig Collins, filling in for Chad Benson today. This is Craig Collins in the Chad Benson Show. He will be back on Monday. I am hanging out with you for all day Friday and thrilled to be here. I'm going to start with the biggest news story, in my opinion, the most important news story of the day, which actually happened yesterday at the Coronavirus Task Force when the president and the medical experts and several people commented on the reopening of our economy, the phased plan, a 3 different phase plan. This is what the start of that press conference sounded like. The president really took a tone that I think a lot of people could like the other day by starting out by just thanking Americans for what's been good, what they had done so far.
The nation is engaged in a historic battle against the invisible enemy. To win this fight, we have undertaken the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And that's exactly what it's been. We've marshaled every instrument of American power, and we've unleashed our most potent weapon of all, the courage of the American people.
And honestly, I think even touching on that there's so many American people that want to see the economy reopen. If you put up a poll anywhere, if you see some of the responses in places like Michigan, Virginia, et cetera, to what's going on and how the everyday person feels about it, there's a lot of people that would like to go back to work. I saw a story about a farmer. I forget exactly where in the country, but a farmer in one of the places that's not hit terribly hard by COVID-19 saying that he would rather make sure his business is around than protect his own safety. And now, granted, that's not really an opinion we can always work with, but that's a sentiment that exists and we have to be aware of throughout the country. A lot of people care about their financial security, their financial ability to keep living life as much as anything else. Honestly, as you see the unemployment numbers, which I can touch on more in a second, you start to feel very weary of how long we can go in the road we're currently in compared to how long we need to go in order to protect ourselves from a health standpoint. President Trump continued yesterday at his press conference about how the experts, his medical experts, his top team, are very involved in the reopening process here. This is not just a plan he came up with on his own for anyone that's critical of the way he's talked about this for a while, which I think at times is incredibly unfair to the guy and at other times maybe a little fair. Who knows? But for the most part, this plan that came out yesterday is very separate from what a lot of people would have assumed it would have been, which is him pushing and no one else thinking that it was a good idea. The medical experts are behind the plan.
Based on the latest data, our team of experts now agrees that we can begin the next front in our war, which we're calling opening up America again. And that's what we're doing. We're opening up our country. And we have to do that. America wants to be open, and Americans want to be open.
Yes, they do. 22 million Americans are out of a job, and we haven't hit the bottom. That's the latest story coming out of a few different places. And actually, the 5.2 million, I believe it is, 5.2 for the previous week, the seasonally adjusted unemployment claims, initial claims from the 5th through the 11th, is a 2-week decrease. The week before, 6.6 million Americans filed for unemployment. The week before that, 6.9 million Americans filed for unemployment. Look, I get it. Some people believe that things like the government paying everyone to not go to work makes sense. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't love that plan, and that plan is not sustainable. We can't keep seeing numbers like this go and go and go when there might be an opportunity to try and have the economy exist again in its correct form. 22 million Americans out of jobs in the last few weeks. And that is not the bottom, according to several experts. There is more to come for sure. In the individual states, you're seeing a lot of claims. Michigan specifically, 311,000 claims. That was the week of March 22nd through the 28th. 384,000 the week of March 29th through April 4th. And then 219,000 April 5th through the 11th. That's why places like Michigan are doing what they're doing. The unemployment numbers are staggering, and they're staggering throughout the entire country. And they cannot continue going this way. Now, granted, we can't put our health at jeopardy in a mass scale. We can't all turn into a New York City who's dealing with this pandemic in a way that a lot of us are not, and they're continuing their isolation for quite a bit longer. But we need to find a road that gives us hope. We need to find a road that gives us a chance of some kind. In different news, I've also seen that Australia has warned to prepare for social distancing of an additional year. This comes from their Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, who said that social distancing is something we should get very used to for the foreseeable future. It could be a year. I'm not speculating about that. That cannot happen. It just can't. I don't think that we can sustain and we can honestly avoid what would be a tremendous conflict for the individuals that are asked to do this and don't want to, and the enforcement of things like that. We cannot do an entire year without finding a road back. And so I imagine most of the people listening are thrilled to hear that a conversation took place yesterday and that it involved people that no matter who you are, you like somebody. You might like the president. A lot of people like the president. You might like the doctors, Birx and Fauci. You like somebody that spoke yesterday, and they were all on board with the same plan, and they were giving the governors the authority to make those decisions in your states, which might make some people more worried than others. It might make some of us weary as to if this is going to happen the way we want it to. But in other places, it would be a very good thing to have the governors be a huge part of that conversation because they're essentially the ones with their ears on the ground. They're the ones that know more of what's going on than, unfortunately, we can at the federal level. So they will, of course, be very involved in that process. Since it is Friday, other news, other things to talk about. I saw a stat that made me laugh a lot because I wonder if it's true for you as much as it's been true for me. I am actually a millennial. I don't know if people know that about me, but I am. So I don't do a lot of the phone calls. I do a lot of the texting. That's a world that I live in a lot more often. And yet this world, this day and age, you got a lot of people making phone calls. 31% of people are staying in touch with their family members via the traditional call. And a lot of people are having to get used to that. 43 are still doing texting as the main thing. 12% are doing the video call, the video conference, much like you would probably be doing at work. But that 31% is a huge uptick from the amount of people that call you on a day-to-day basis. And I think that that's probably because a lot of family is getting in touch with other family, and maybe they're all not used to it. So I am curious, and I'd love to hear your response on the social media. Are you having more phone calls than you've had in a while? Go to the Chad Benson Show on Facebook or Twitter. You can also go to my show, Craig Collins Show, and let me know what you think. But are you getting a bunch more phone calls? Are you making them? Do you want to hear people's voice more than you've ever have before? And I'm not. It's not that I'm mean. That came out mean. I'm fine with texting. Texting is a perfectly sufficient way in which to get information from people. Am I super fast about it in my responding? Not all the time. Every once in a while, Craig Collins might neglect for a day or two. Not always a day. A few hours to get back via the text, but it's there, and I'm coming back. I'm going to respond, and that's perfectly fine as a form of communication. But a whole lot of people are going a different road, and it makes sense to me, and especially probably people who were used to the phone call anyway. I actually had a conversation with a buddy about voicemail and how weird it is to be getting so many of those now. Because when you don't answer, if you have a family member that now relies on calling instead of texting, and I don't know if you're busy, I don't know why you don't answer, but if you don't and they leave a voicemail, it's sort of weird. Because if you're of a certain age, say my age, the millennial, you're not used to having many voicemails. And I know I sound ridiculous when I say it. I get it. I'm just putting it out there. I'm being honest. We're in the trust tree when I'm on the radio. So I'm just telling you that it's weird for me to look down at my phone and see like 3 voicemails sitting there waiting for me to listen to. Because honestly, and this is more just a tip for anyone that's dealing with someone in the age range that I'm in, they're probably not going to listen to it. The odds of them actually listening to the voicemail are real bad. My little brother on his voicemail says, I'm probably not going to listen to this, which might seem disrespectful, but it is a thing he does. So maybe send him a text, let him know another way. Because I don't know, you get conditioned to a certain thing, right? Like we all do. I also saw that Americans are buying houseplants at a crazy rate, which is probably good. 43% of Americans in a recent survey admitted they either really, really need a new plant in their life or they recently got one. They also did admit that they're really bad at taking care of the plants, which is not good. I mean, if you want to feel like you're getting the outdoors inside the home, you got to do your part. You got to water this thing. Maybe there's been something to the idea that people also feel like they need more in their background in the Zoom conference call. I don't know. But the conversation said 30% admitted they're really bad at keeping plants alive. Another 13% said they were iffy. This is not that hard. And again, this is now where I'll break bad against my millennial brethren because we're terrible at keeping plants alive. You just got to water it. It's not an animal. It's not a child. It's not complicated. There's no psychological component to it. There's no walking it. You do nothing. You fill up a cup with water, you pour it in the plant on a consistent basis, and you walk away and you're fine. And so many people are struggling with it, and yet they really, really want it. 57% of people said they were at least somewhat capable of keeping a plant alive. 57%. And just somewhat. That's insane. That's crazy. Although my wife, she loves cactuses. They are notoriously hard to keep. I'm not trying. She's sitting across from me because we broadcast from the home right now, and she wants to sit in the same room because anywhere else in the house, she just hears me yelling and doesn't know what's going on. So she sits here and she's looking at me. It's not. I don't mean about the cactus. The cactus is a very difficult plant to keep alive. I would judge no one for being incapable of keeping that one alive. But the regular stuff, the normal house plants, are the kind of things that we should all be very capable of managing, and we should all be able to answer the phone. I will do that here. I'll do my part. As a millennial right now, I will admit and say that I might not have been great at answering the phone calls that are coming in at a higher rate than I'm used to. But I'm going to improve that moving forward, and I implore all people in my age group to do the same thing. If a family member wants to call and talk to you on the phone, don't try to turn it into a text. And not even just a family member, a friend, anybody. If someone wants to reach out, Don't pull that whole, we can do it this way thing. Just do it the way they want. Suffer through the phone call. And it's not that hard. Come on. This is the easiest thing you'll ever do in your life. Just chit-chat and be done. And don't try to turn it into a text message. I'm agreeing to that, and I hope a lot more people in the age group do. I got to take a break. A lot more coming up in just a few minutes. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show, where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
It's Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show, hanging out with you all day Friday. Chad is back on Monday. I got a great story from my producer, Kara, about the delivery foods that are most popular via state. So these are what every state is turning to. You won't be surprised. A majority of this is comfort food. Even the chicken tikka masala that's being purchased in mass in California, that is just chicken and rice. Let's be honest. That's a really good version, a curry version of the chicken and rice. So rice is very much a comfort food. Arizona going with the French fry, which no one can besmirch them for. Actually, a lot of places going with the French fry. I'm going to give a quick shout out to Indiana, Indiana and WIBC, which is an affiliate of this program. Craig Collins apologizes to Chad Benson. I'm sorry for doing that shout out, but they're getting it better than Illinois. I actually live close to the Illinois. I'm in the Illinois area. We're going French fry like a lot of other places. In Indiana, they're going waffle fry, and that is a better product. Come on. We all know the waffle fry is a better product than the regular French fry, so they're going that road. Io with a poke bowl. A poke bowl, I don't even know how to say that exactly because that's a fancy, it's a rice, fish, edamame dish, but that's a good thing. I've never had it before, as you can tell, as I mispronounce it. And my wife just looks at me crazy as she's sitting in the basement with me as I broadcast from home. I've never had one of those. I apologize. Never done it. No, there were a bunch of things in there that I don't eat. There's the fish products, the edamame, not usually the roads I'm turning. Louisiana getting it completely right. The chips and queso move, that is a very smart. Last time I did one of our grocery runs, I bought a whole bunch of queso, several of the things, and we have like 4 bags of tortilla chips in the house right now because that is a comfort food you need to switch to. Some other states, in on this. Maryland going with the egg, bacon, and cheese sandwich. That is smart. Let's be honest here, too. I can't hate any of these things. And honestly, as I go through this list that she sent me, I'm just getting hungry. This really is unfair to make me run through this because everywhere I'm going, it's just hungrier and hungrier as you go. Another state that I really seem to agree with is Massachusetts. They're going with the burrito. I actually have a spot near me that does what they call socially distant burritos, where they put them in individual boxes. So you get your own burrito in its own box. None of the other burritos, if you order more than one, they're going to socially distance all those burritos. And honestly, for the fact that it's a little bit of a funny laugh and it's a burrito, I've probably bought from that place way more times than I should, and I'm really enjoying it. Nevada doing the chicken teriyaki bowl. Again, a lot of these bowl items are being chosen, and that's fine with me. There's a lot of easy things in there. New York with the jerk chicken, and sometimes too spicy for me, but most of the time just delicious enough. It's a good move. New Jersey also with a chicken sandwich. Really surprised that those 2 spots are not going pizza. Like really, really surprised that in those areas. As a guy that grew up on the East Coast and no longer lives there, I tremendously miss, and I know that there's affiliates all over the country for this, and you guys don't all think what I think, but East Coast pizza is the best. It's just hands down the best. If I were in those places, I would be eating just that every day until this thing was over. I would order several pizzas, and I would be the best. I'd eat them alone. The wife would judge me a lot for doing it, and I wouldn't care because that's the kind of world we live in right now. The binge eating and the comfort food eating, totally acceptable in today's day and age. North Carolina going nachos, which I'm impressed with. Way to go there, the number 1 food item they're ordering in that state. Ohio with just some fries as well. Oklahoma, a spicy tuna roll. My brain never would have connected those things together. I would not have seen in Oklahoma as going sushi way sooner than any of the other places I just mentioned, including in New York, including in Illinois, including in California. The fact that the first spot on this list that I saw that has sushi as the takeout of choice is Oklahoma. Honestly, that's the value of the whole segment right there. The whole bit is to learn that information. And not saying that people there wouldn't love a sushi. People everywhere love a sushi. But if you're somewhere like in Oklahoma, I imagine there's also a really great beef product of some kind you might want to grab. Pennsylvania doing it right with the cheesesteak. See, now this actually fits. You got the marquee item in the marquee spot, and they're just ordering it en masse. Rhode Island with the hot dog. South Carolina with the French fry as well. So many French fries on this list. Texas went pad thai. Again, very confused. A slab of beef is very available in Texas. I don't see burgers on this list anywhere. Utah has a carne asada fry, which sounds delicious. That is a nice little steak fry situation, but just still not the same thing. Washington going with the French fry for the state. Wisconsin with crab rangoon. Some people are way too fancy here. You guys are missing the point. I'm not trying to judge, to each their own. But at the same time, man, like if all these options are out there, go pizza, go French fry, or waffle fry if you're as smart as they are in Indy. All right, it's the Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson show on a Friday. More to come.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Or at least for today, it's Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Chad is back on Monday. I thank him and everybody for letting me fill in for the day. I really enjoy being a part of your Friday. And we got to have fun on a Friday, but we do have to cover the news of the day, too, of course. One of the pieces of information that came out of the coronavirus task force yesterday, a fairly important one, because we talked a lot about reopening the economy for the first time. The medical experts and everyone involved with the coronavirus task force gave guidelines, phased guidelines, 3 different separate phases that involve a certain amount of criteria to take place, an amount of decrease in either infections that are confirmed and or just symptoms that are similar to those of COVID-19, so that we get to a point where the economy can reopen and we don't have the millions and millions of unemployment claims that we're dealing with right now, 22 million or so in the last few weeks, essentially wiping out 10 years of job creation, a decade's worth of job creation gone in a few short weeks because of what we're doing to the economy and all this, and we need to find a way to stop that. One of the questions asked to the president the other day was about the protests that are cropping up in places like Michigan and Virginia. He believes, the president, that a lot of the people in those protests probably value his opinion quite a bit. He said this in response to that question.
Well, they've been going through it a long time, John, and it's been a tough process for people. You know, I told you there's death and there's problems in staying at home, too. It's not just, isn't it wonderful to stay at home? They're suffering. This country wasn't built on that principle. It was built on an exact opposite principle, actually. And I watched in one particular state where they want to get back. They want to get back. They were very strict sanctions that were put on people. That was probably the most strict of all. But I just think the American people have been incredible. When you look at, John, when you look at what they've done, when you look at what they've been through, when you look at all of the death and all of the problems and all of the sickness, when you look at what's happened, I just think the American people have been incredible.
And that's a tone he struck throughout the press conference yesterday, a tone I think he'll continue to strike, is thanking and acknowledging the work done by the American people to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem, even when you have places that are starting to get very fed up with the current situation and desiring an end to it and looking for ways in which it needs to end, which is yet another reason why the announcement yesterday was so very important and something I focused on so much throughout the show today. Because it provides a lot of opportunity for people who want it. In northern Florida, for example, they're going to start reopening the beaches. Now, they got a lot of criticism in parts of Florida for being so late to close a lot of these things. But the mayor there in Duval County said that the beaches will reopen as of Friday afternoon, so kind of around right now, with strict hours, or excuse me, a little while ago, actually, with strict hours, and that they can only be used for walking, biking, hiking, fishing, running, swimming, taking care of pets, and surfing. The beach will be open between morning and daytime hours, and then again between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock Eastern, so that 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time is what he said in the viral video that he posted on social media media, gatherings of 50 or more people are still prohibited, and people must practice social distancing while going to things like the beach. I actually saw a crazy story out of Italy, of all places, where a company is trying to find a way to enable social distancing on beaches via a plexiglass cubicle. And I'm not lying. Dead serious, that's the thing they were trying to develop. It's a giant set of cubicles that you drop on a beach. You got the plexiglass so you can see through, you can enjoy the surroundings, but you're completely contained in your own spot. And then according to the company in Italy, this will never happen, by the way. I'm entertained with the idea that's floated, but you can't do this. You'd have a lifeguard yell things like cubicle 6, hit the beach, hit the ocean for 5 minutes and then get out. And then cubicle 7, you're going to take your turn. And if you ask, like, why would you do that instead of just the social distancing? I guess the barrier might help from, like, blowing a cough or something from one guy to another guy. So maybe there's some level of logical benefit to it. And I love the idea that they'd throw it out there. They'd be like, hey, we're a company that can make these. Anybody interested? But no, I apologize to that company. For the most part, it won't happen, although it would be kind of amusing to get to go to the beach, even if you had to be cubicled, because I'd probably still be willing to do it, especially as the weather starts to get nicer again. You got to go to those places where, we're used to going just for your own mental health. And even if I'm sitting in a glass cubicle and the guy next to me has his own, at least I'm on the beach. I would do it if it became a thing. I can't see it becoming a thing. But in Florida, they're going to open some of these beaches. Officials have been criticized in the past, as I said, for leaving things open during especially spring break. It won't be quite the demand that it was then, I think. And if you continue to tout the need, and that's honestly what the whole phased approach to reopening the entire country is still following all those guidelines. If restaurants open during phase 1, which Dr. Birx hit on yesterday, along with potentially gyms, not schools so much yet, but a lot of the other areas, they would practice social distancing. They would practice cleaning their hands, all the disinfecting things we're supposed to do. We'd go back to those things that we thought would do really beneficial stuff for us. We'd rely on those more heavily than just staying in our own homes all the time, and we'd hope for the best. And honestly, there were a lot of people asking why restaurants couldn't find a way to seat people so far apart and do, a lot of stuff to make sure to mitigate the amount of connection we all have while we're out in public. And we can do our part to do that as well, because these businesses need to be open. They need to run. You need to go to the gym or the beach or a lot more than just the grocery store. The grocery store is great that it's open. Not that you can go there whenever you feel like it. You should probably only go when you need to. But it would be very good to go to a lot of the other places that have been closed for a while and just try to follow those guidelines if we can. And so that phased approach that was talked about yesterday will include stuff like beaches, will include stuff like gyms, all the things you want to see open, and you'll just have to follow the rules. So people might be upset about this story out of Florida, and yet, depending on how it goes, it'll honestly be completely in line with the stuff they're talking about yesterday. And if you see a huge uptick in cases, that's when you got to pull back. In sad news, I saw that Von Miller, the linebacker for the Denver Broncos, has been tested positive for COVID-19. Now, granted, a lot of the people who get this, especially the athletes who are very healthy, and he's in good spirits. He's at home. He's in quarantine. He's not a serious case quite yet. He does have some things that might make him more at risk that he talked about. There might be some conditions he's weary about. So we'll see as the progress goes there. But honestly, a lot of these athletes who have gotten this have been okay. Some of them have been symptom-free. A lot of people have been symptom-free, actually. I didn't really mention it on the show a lot today, but there were a couple different studies that demonstrated, one in pregnant women of all groups and another one in the homeless population in Boston, that a lot of people may be asymptomatic, a lot more than we realize. And I know that Dr. Fauci in the last couple weeks had started throwing out the number as high as 50% early on during the discussions about COVID-19, as we went all over the place for what we did and didn't understand, probably because there were places that could have helped us know and they didn't give us the information we needed. But we've been all over the place as far as how many people could be asymptomatic. And now we're definitely at a point where the belief is a lot of people. And if you look at these two studies in pregnant women and in the homeless population in Boston, some homeless shelters, it was something like 80% of the people that they tested in both of those, something in that range, that were asymptomatic completely. And they didn't follow up with the people, the women who were giving birth in a hospital to see if they eventually developed symptoms. But it seemed that at least most of them might have had it for a while and not really been aware that it's something they had. And they just put testing in to people that were having kids in this specific hospital just to kind of see what was going on more so than anything else. They had 3 women that had symptoms, I believe, and 1 that developed them. But a large majority of the people that were tested in that study did not have symptoms at all, even if they wound up being positive for COVID-19. So that says a lot to us about the way we continue to understand this and continue to try to adapt to it. Another piece of news that I saw that is going to be welcome news to a lot of people. Starbucks closed a lot of restaurants, a lot of their locations, and they plan to reopen those in June. As of May 3rd, Starbucks is going to gradually start reopening those stores, and their plan is to have every single one open by the very beginning of June. They had taken some dramatic steps as far back as March 20th to close a lot of those locations, to not even do any of the drive-through stuff that they still do at some of the spots. But they're going to start backpedaling on that because, hopefully, again, one of the big things we see here that we're going to be monitoring a lot in the next few weeks is how seasonal coronavirus winds up being, to make it maybe even easier to find ways for even places that have been hit a lot harder to start to find a path toward going back to normal, at least for the summer, and then hoping that it lasts quite a bit longer and hoping that we progress a lot. Remdesivir, as I mentioned in the show, is something that's showing a lot of promise. There was a leaked study showing that they cured or helped people get over within a few days COVID-19, especially in serious cases. It was granted a small trial, about 125 total people, but most of them got better. There were 2 deaths, unfortunately, but that's a lot smaller than the amount you assume in people that are very sick. So there's a lot of good news. There's a lot of good news happening all over the world right now, and a lot of things, as obviously there's a lot of really bad news every day coming out, and the death toll is something that I've said this before. It'll always lag behind, and a lot of other people say it, so I just repeat it. It'll always lag behind everything else. The death toll will never be the stat that we get first that shows promise. It'll be everything else. It'll be the cases number, the new diagnoses, the amount of people with symptoms, the amount of people getting over the illness will continue to rise, of course. But the one thing that's always going to be behind, and I think places like Illinois actually saw the largest death toll that they've had so far in a single day just the other day. So those numbers are still going to be scary. If you turn on the television, if you turn on the news and watch any of that stuff, you're going to start to think to yourself, man, are we doing the right thing? Some of you, at least. A lot of you probably won't be as concerned. But then if you start looking at the other numbers is when you get to the place where the president and his medical experts have gotten to, that we can start moving forward and finally get things rolling the way that they very much need to be rolling in order for us to not do something that we've unfortunately had to do the last few weeks, was just continue to put people on unemployment and continue to struggle in an economy that was doing incredible just a little while ago. All right, another break and a lot more coming up on the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
Usually that's true. The Chad Benson Show. I am Craig Collins filling in on a Friday. He will be back on Monday. One Friday at a time. I guess we're doing this kind of thing. I'm enjoying being here. And you've got to be sillier when you get to the end of the week. So I saw a few stories that I'll touch on in just a second. That I might need to warn some people to earmuffs if you got a kid in the car. But don't worry. I'll handle it the right way. But before I do that, I also want to mention that the G7 is seeking more review and reform as far as the World Health Organization goes. In a press release that came out recently from the White House, the leaders recognized that the G7 nations annually contribute more than $1 billion to the World Health Organization, and much of the conversation centered around a lack of transparency and chronic mismanagement of the pandemic by the WHO. The leaders called for a thorough review and reform process. That is after President Trump, announced earlier this week that he would be suspending funding for the World Health Organization while it conducted its own review. Now the G7 seems to be in support of that, which I think is a very good thing. All right, let's get to silly stuff on a Friday. There is a mom out of Utah that's gone viral. She actually posted this photo, I think, about a week ago, and since it's gone very viral, I can't even read the hashtag T on the air. Well, I guess I could. I could say the word. I'm not going to say the word, but it's hashtag project something mask. And the idea is that she wanted to put a design on the masks that she was making to demonstrate that you need to back up. And she actually used more colorful language than even that, too. She said, the statement of this mask is to remind people to kindly back the some other words up. And so what is it? Well, you'd call them inappropriate images. They're male anatomy in a small image is printed on the face mask that you'd wear. And if someone can make out the image, according to Mindy Vincent, the woman in Utah who created these, they need to realize that they've gotten a little bit too close. If you're far away, it just looks like a typical mask with a lot of different colors on it. If you get really close, it becomes more obvious what is in that situation. So she's trying to remind a lot of people. She offered to make masks and donate money for these specific kinds of items to the Utah Harm Reduction Coalition. So it's all going to charity. And she got blown up with requests, by the way. People loved it, which is something in this time, in this day and age, to have that be so popular. But it was. She's working feverishly, it says in the article, to make the masks. She had to buy enough fabric to make 19,000 of these. And I was just talking to my producer. She asked a really good question. Where do you get the fabric? Do you custom make this kind of thing? I don't know. But if you're looking up the project, the word that I'm not saying, mask, on Facebook, you will see thousands and thousands of requests for this. She is feverishly, like I said, trying to make that happen for all the people that very much want one. But $56,000 raised for charity as she's selling these masks to remind you that you may have gotten just a tad too close because the image you're seeing is probably not one you want to see. And that's actually a good reminder for all the people out there who are sending photos, because there was another story of the news about a certain type of photo being more popular than it's ever been. No one wants to see that. The lady is making the point via the face mask, and even though the photo is now becoming a very popular, more than it ever was kind of thing, the general consensus by almost everyone involved, apparently, is that these are not appealing things, and you don't have no interest in being that visually close to any of that, which is a very funny to me idea, but it's now being played out in many a way. The masks are available for $20, and her website is still up selling them, although it does mention she's temporarily sold out, and she's loving the overwhelming support that she's been getting. But if you want to look into it, it's a thing that's out there. One other feel-good story on a Friday that I wanted to share. There's a bunch of kids all over the country who don't have access to Wi-Fi, don't have access to the internet. And in Austin, they came up with a pretty cool solution. They deployed about 110 school buses throughout their school community that were equipped with Wi-Fi. They put these buses in areas where a lot of the kids were living and could get access to it. The bus became available about 300 feet away from some of these neighborhoods from 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the students were given the access information to get on the computers, not for personal devices, not for whatever they wanted, but for school devices. And the Wi-Fi equipped buses are funded through a $600,000 grant that came from an education technology provider out there. During the press release, when they were talking about this, one of the chief technology officers in Austin said, as we prepare for the possibility of extended school closures, we know that the internet connection is a lifeline and a learning link for our students. We will be deploying as many as 500 plus buses to locations around our school district so that students can connect with these Chromebook devices they've been given, these Google devices, and continue their learning. It must be tremendously challenging for any of the parents out there that have kids at home now that are trying to learn on the internet, especially depending on what the subject is. And if you're working from home and you can't really help them out with that, I get that. And even more challenging for people who don't have access to things like the internet. So what a feel-good story out of Austin to do their part to find a way to get these kids access to the internet, to get these kids a way in which they can continue to learn and continue to be a part of school every single day, because it's just of the utmost importance. I will revisit one more story that amused me earlier in the show, and I think I mentioned a lot today, but it does amuse me, and it comes out of Maryland, and you just got to know that this is the right thing to do. It's actually fairly connected to the mom in Utah, but the police officers in Maryland had to tell people to wear pants when they went outside to get their mail. We all know that it's casual times right now. We all know that a lot of rules don't apply. You can do the video conference and just have the shirt, I guess, on. As long as people aren't aware of what's going on down bottom, you're probably going to be okay. And actually, there was a story out of Walmart that tops were selling out like crazy, but no one was buying more pants. And so the Maryland police had to step in. They had to say, hey, you got to put pants on when you check the mailbox. And my favorite part, they said, you know who you are on their social media post. This has been Craig Collins filling in. Have a great Friday. Be safe out there. Chad Benson back on the Chad Benson Show on Monday.
is The Chad Benson Show.